Hey, everybody, welcome again to another episode of Grow Yourself from the Inside Out. Today we're going to be talking about tapping into the power of your personality. And I must say that in my work as a soft skills coach and consultant and speaker, this is really, this is important to me. I talk a lot about people's personality, I should say their personal brands. And so this will be a fascinating topic. What is a personality? And what does a personality have to do with your success? Well, we have actually an expert here who is going to talk to us about that. And let me introduce you before I bring him on. So we have Merrick Rosenberg. He co-founded Team Builders Plus in 1991 and Take Flight Learning in 2012. He's the author of Personality Wins, the Chameleon, and Taking Flight, 3 books about personality. Under Merrick's leadership as CEO of Take Flight Learning, his company has been selected as the New Jersey Business of the Year and named one of the fastest growing and best places to work in Philadelphia area. Merrick received his MBA from Drexel University, who recognized him as Alumni Entrepreneur of the Year. Merrick has worked with more than half of Fortune 100 companies in the US and around the world. And I'm so pleased to have Merrick here with me now. Merrick Rosenberg, thank you so much for joining us on Grow Yourself.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. I am excited to be here.
So Merrick, before we kind of get started, I ask all my guests this, who is Merrick Rosenberg? Where did you come from and how did you end up in your spot today?
Right out of college, I'd gotten a job. I was a management consultant for a little while, and I was reorganizing workflow and restructuring departments. And I realized incredibly quickly, one, that was not for me. But 2, I realized you can change the structure, you can change what they do. But if you don't have great leadership, if you don't have a great culture, you're going to have problems. And so I went back, got an MBA, and discovered team building while I was there. And I thought, wow, what a great job. I could get paid to play games with people. What a country. And started a team building company right out of grad school, literally day one after I graduated. Let's do it. And just grew it from there and discovered personality styles. And from there, built out a whole distribution system and process for teaching people about themselves. It's just been a fun ride. It's always been about culture and leadership and teamwork and getting people to work together well.
Ooh, boy, you set off a bunch of words that triggered me on a lot of different levels. I mean, I start to think about all of those things as we discuss personality, about culture and I also talk about one's mind's culture, the culture that rolls in our mind. But in any event, relative to personalities, why did you go down? Why did you decide on the personalities niche? What sort of hooked you in there?
As I was running team building programs, it was pretty clear that so much of the conflict and the drama was because people just didn't understand each other. They didn't realize that different didn't equal good, they felt like different equaled bad. And if we could just all be the same, and if people could do things how I do it, and boy, that wouldn't that be easy? And so I very quickly realized this is exactly what I want to put my energy into, just teaching people about themselves. The most self-aware people are the happiest people.
I love
but
it. Also
teaching people how to get along with others. And the beauty of this is that it really is this one topic that people are going to go and learn about themselves, and they will typically learn about themselves, whether it's a conference for work or in the workplace. And it's the one topic they're going to go home and they're going to talk about at the kitchen table.
Wow.
And that's powerful.
No, it's very powerful. So Merrick, let's center the audience on what you mean by personality. How would you define a personality or one's personality?
It's just the whole combination of our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. They're so intertwined. I think a lot of times in corporate America, we think, well, no, we don't talk about emotions. We don't talk about feelings. Well, you know what? Our fears and our motivators drive our behaviors. If you're someone who needs for something to be right, for you to feel safe and comfortable, well, then in the outer world, we're going to see someone who has a lot of processes and systems and timelines, and they're very organized and structured. So our thoughts and our feelings drive our behaviors. For me, they're just inherently connected. And I want people to learn about how they think and how they feel and how they act and how that impacts the people in their life, whether it's at work or at home.
Wow, fascinating. So before we get into asking about your books and the very fascinating sort of take that you have on personalities, let me ask you then, just generally speaking, perhaps beyond the obvious, what, you know, how does your personality help you become successful or not successful, by the way?
Well, it's a matter of tapping into the power of your personality. You take someone who's gone into a field where their personality resonates with their job. And every day it's like they go home and it feeds them. They go home and they feel like I could do that all day long because it doesn't even feel like work. But then you take someone whose personality does not resonate with the job, and it's absolutely exhausting because they're working out of their style all day. They're doing things they shouldn't be doing. Yeah, for me, I'm more on the people-oriented side of the continuum. I love being on stage and being in front of a group of people and talking about their personality and how they can work together better. If you stuck me in a cubicle 8 hours a day, crunching data without any human interaction, could I do it? Sure, but I'd go home every day absolutely exhausted.
So are we born with our personalities? Again, yeah. Are we born with it?
Yeah, there's so much data now that the whole nature nurture conversation, I mean, it's pretty much been settled. Anyone who has 2 kids, you know, from like day one that they are probably very different and there's nothing you can do to change their personality. You may have one kid who is just energetic and risk-taking and uses playground equipment in ways that were clearly not intended. And you're like, what are you doing? Then you have another one who is very safe and careful and analytical. And there's nothing you could have done to change either of them. They're just going to be who they are. And so there's definitely hardwiring.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I mean, they always say that it's a combination of both, but it makes sense what you're saying. So then, just you know, again, you bring up these really interesting ideas in my head. So as you're raising kids, though, and they have personalities, you know, I think some of us, I'll talk about my 2 daughters that I raised simultaneously. They both had incredibly different, still have incredibly different personalities. But you know, do we parents want to change their personalities? I think I tried at some point, if there was something that I didn't like about their personality, I tried to maybe shape it a little bit. But so if it's not doing that, what are you trying to do as you raise your kids with their personality, but you want to shape certain, I guess, certain behaviors or whatever the case might be? I'm not sure if that question made any sense.
Oh, absolutely. Well, what it really is all about is helping them to become the best version of who they are.
Got it.
And if I were to use the styles, I'll give you a little overview so we can use them here.
Please.
If you are an eagle parent, now eagles are confident, they're direct, they're assertive, they're take charge. And you have maybe a dove child who's more soft-spoken and compassionate and caring, and it probably goes into a field where they're in service of others, where they help other people. Now, as that eagle parent, you look at that child and you say, you know, they're going to need to be more assertive in life. If they're not going to accomplish anything. People are going to walk all over them. They're not going to get their needs met. So you see the child, and maybe the child is standing in line at a ice cream truck and somebody walks in front of them, and the kid feels bad about it already, but the parent yells at the kid, hey, tell them, you're in charge. You're here first. You want people to step on you in life. And what you're really sending this message to this child is this, that you need to be more like me. I'm assertive. I'm direct. That's how I got where I am in life. And if you were more like me, you know what? I would respect you. In fact, you need to change to be more like me, because who you are right now is not okay. And that is just a horrible message. What we really need to do is nurture the innate skills, honor the fact that that child is probably incredibly empathetic, that they're probably there for all their friends, that they care about people and animals, and they just want to help others to be happy and healthy and safe. Maybe we nurture those skills instead of saying, fight for the ball, get in there. Yeah. You're not going to win unless you push people around and you get what you, it's like, we just send such a horrible message when we do that.
God, that is so good what you're saying there. You know, because it sounds like if you press it, you know, another way, you almost deny them of their personality. And in the end, they, I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume that they grow up with this, this difficulty, this challenge in their mind about what was impressed upon them versus their natural style, right? And so this becomes a struggle that they probably don't need.
It's exactly right. It's as if they have these two voices, one on each shoulder.
Bam.
One is whispering, this is who I am. And another is whispering, well, this is who you should be. And we do this to our spouse.
Yeah.
We marry them because they're different from us. And then we try to turn them into us.
Yes.
We do this to our direct reports. We hire them because they have this interesting skill set that we don't have. And then we try to turn them into the way, we get them to do things the way we would do them. And we are constantly imposing our style on others, as opposed to saying, the fact that they're different adds something unique to this relationship. And I want to value that instead of try to turn them into the best version of me instead of the best version of them.
And you're not talking about dominant, hateful people. You're talking about good, well-intended people who may inadvertently, try to do these sorts of things, right? And I think that's a very important distinction that we don't, and I'll speak for Kevin, that I don't think that that's everybody else out there, and that whatever my intentions are about my kids or my spouse or even my friends, that with the best of intentions, I may just not like or appreciate their style or whatever. And therefore I try to influence them to be different than they are.
You're 100% right. I think, in fact, I would take it a step further. I think they have positive intention. They're trying to help, but what they don't realize is they're trying to turn them into someone else. I'll give you an example using the other two styles. We've got the parrot, who's very enthusiastic, who's very social, they're upbeat, they're very motivational. They're good at sales, they're good at marketing, they're good at schmoozing and persuading. Then you have owls, who are logical and analytical and detail-oriented. They have a process and a system. Now, can you imagine if they reported to each other? You have a parrot sitting in their performance review with their owl staff member, and they say, you need to get out there. You need to build relationships with people. That's how you get things done. And they're correcting the way they do things. You have the owl manager talking to the parrot and saying, you're always out wandering around talking to people. You got to get organized, get structured, have a process and a system. That's how you get things done. They don't realize that they're actually imposing their style on others and trying to change people. They're trying to be helpful, but they're doing it. And what they're really doing is invalidating who you are and the way you approach the world. And we really should just be honoring people.
Wow. And that's hard to do, because we're stuck in our own heads. Again, I'll speak for myself. I guess like many other people, I can be very judgmental about others and how they're behaving and what they should be or how they should be or what they're not. And that's not really fair. And I love what you're saying, that we learn to, Kevin and others learn to be more accepting of circumstances and other people and their styles and work within that realm. Let me ask real quick though. So tell us about your books and, how you arrived at these 4 personality styles. It's fascinating. I just want you to stream and tell us about that.
I used letters for a long time. There are many different systems that have different letters that symbolize the styles. But I would go back 6 months later and they're like, which one is the D again? Wait, what does the P stand for? And people just weren't remembering it. And if you can't remember it, how are you using it? And so I wanted it to be something visual, something that I don't have to teach them the characteristics of an eagle. You think about an eagle, you think they're direct and driven. You think about a dove, you just would imagine they're calm and peaceful. You'd imagine an owl is logical and detail-oriented, and a parrot's talkative and outgoing. So because they embody the traits, it made it easy. And I wanted to write a book. So many books about personality are so clinical and psychological. They don't even interest me, and this is my world. And I wanted it to be fun. And so Taking Flight is one long story. It's a fable that you get to learn about the birds, see them in action, see the challenges they face as they try to solve some problems that they are encountering in their world. And then the second half of the book is, okay, now how do you use it in your life?
I love that.
But what was funny was Taking Flight was like what was like writing a movie. The Chameleon is 22 fables. It's taking the 4 birds Then I turned it into a sitcom, and it's like writing 22 episodes where they each have a different story and a different plot and a different lesson, and people get to learn about the birds in an even deeper way. So to me, it's really just about learning about your style and how you interact with others and how you can help others be their best.
That's fascinating. So Taking Flight is your latest book?
Taking Flight was first.
Oh, it was first.
Then came The Chameleon. And I also
Okay.
wrote Which Bird Are You?, which is a children's book. And it takes place in a camp, and children get to learn about themselves. And, it's so funny. I speak at conferences, and people come, and they're business conferences. People come up to me afterwards. They have more questions about their children and their spouse than they even do about the topic at hand, which is how are you using this in the workplace? And so many people over the years are like, you have to write a book for kids. And finally, I said, all right, it is time. And I wrote Which Bird Are You? So kids could learn about the style.
What age level does it tend to work best for?
It's about ages 8 to 12, though.
Okay.
Parents could certainly read it to them if you're.
That's true. Yeah. No, that's really good. So talk about the 4 styles a little bit more. And I also want to ask about, the personality styles. I mean, I assume, do you have like a dominant style and then a secondary style, somewhat like DISC? If
Yes.
others aren't familiar with DISC is a profile, which I use, but I wholeheartedly support what you're saying about there, just remembering an ego and what style that is. So we're not limited to one style, correct?
I'm a parrot with a secondary eagle. My wife is an owl with a secondary dove style. We are all combinations of all 4. We have a little bit of everything within us, but there's probably 1 or 2 styles which you have a lot of. There's probably 1 which you don't have very much of, and it gets you in trouble every now and then because you need it, but you don't access it. And yes, to your point, we all have everything, but in all likelihood, there's 1 or 2 styles which kind of feed you, and when you're in that mode, it's easy and it's fun. You can guess my owl is pretty low, hence my example about just sitting in a cubicle all day focusing on data. That would not be a good role for me. Whereas my wife is an owl, she could do that all day and she's fine.
Very interesting, because I think that I'm also a parrot with a secondary of an eagle, I would say. And maybe my wife, she is clearly a dove. She is a peacemaker from the word go. Very interesting as I think about this. So again, can you tell us, by the way, one of the stories or the fables from your book? I'd love to just hear one so that the audience can just get a gist of what they might go read.
Sure. I came home one day, I was on a business trip. Keeping in mind, I'm the parrot, my wife is the owl. And I was sharing pictures with her of my journeys. As a parrot eagle, I have fun. I had hiked an 8,000-foot mountain by myself. While I was getting towards the top in Oregon, I thought probably would have been good if I'd told someone where I was, but parrots don't think that far in advance. There's a mountain. I've got time. I'm going to go. I was speaking at a conference in the morning. I was done. I had the rest of the day. And so I was just sharing the stories with her, and I was showing her pictures. And when I came home, she said to me, I made a decision while you were away. I watch how you live your life. You're so spontaneous and you just live in the moment. I want to add some of that to my life. As an owl, you can imagine, very planned and structured. She said, I made a decision and I have a plan. I am going to make every Tuesday Spontaneity Day. So I looked at her and I was like, you do hear yourself as you say that out loud, right?
That is good.
I know, I hear it. But she did, and for like a whole year, every Tuesday, she maybe cooked something she never cooked, went someplace she'd never been, tried something she's never tried, and she brought so many interesting new experiences into her world. And I wrote a fable called Spontaneity Day, and it just shows how the birds live their lives differently. And then in a sense, what happens is they have to switch roles, and the parrot has to be very structured and the owl has to be totally spontaneous. And it just doesn't work for them because now they're trying to be someone who they're not. And it really is about understanding that we approach the world differently. We live our lives in different ways, and it's okay. We go on vacation together and my wife plans it, and I find the fun, spontaneous things that she wouldn't have found in the guidebooks. And between the two of us, we don't miss any of the big things, but we also have room for spontaneity for the moments that arise, and we balance each other. And that's what that fable is about, just honoring that we're different.
I love that. And, I mean, just listening to you speak about it can quickly understand, but I want to ask, how would a person, whether it be in the workplace or with their family or whatever the case might be, in their church or synagogue or whatever, how would you kind of use this as a tool? So let me pose it from this standpoint. How is it important for me to understand my personality and perhaps understand other personalities? So maybe in the workplace is easier to say this, that you have a team of people. It's important for me to understand my personality because, I want to be self-aware about how I behave and as I'm interacting with others. But at the same time, we want to know other personalities as well. So how do you use this idea of the 4 styles as a tool for, let's say, working in a team, as an example?
The first step is you have to understand your own style.
Okay.
You've got to understand, this is my style, because if you don't understand your style, you are destined to impose it on others. The second step is you have to be able to read people. So I have to be able to meet someone quickly. And if I meet someone and they say, "Hi, nice to meet you," I'm like, okay, there's some eagle. And if they walk up to me and say, "Hello, how are you? It's so nice to meet you." Okay, I'm interacting with some dove. Where perhaps they say, "Hey, how are you? Great to meet you. What a happy day." You've just met a parrot. Owls, very businesslike. "Hello, nice to meet you." Very formal, very, very professional. And so first step, you got to know your own style. Second step, you got to be able to read others. Once you do that, you just ask yourself the question, what do they need in this moment? If I'm talking to a dove, maybe I soften my words. If I'm talking to an eagle, I get to the point. If I'm talking to an owl, I provide them with all the information they need. If I'm talking to a parrot, dial up the energy. The more excited you are, the more excited they are. So it's really a matter of just understanding yourself and understanding others and being flexible. It's why I called my second book was The Chameleon, being flexible and adaptable to be able to connect with anybody in any situation. And whether it's at work or home, that's how you use it. It's just being able to flex to the people around you.
That's fascinating. And if I may say, perfectly stated and answered, because and you sort of brought up my next question, and that is about, when you run into another person, let's say you are an eagle and they're a dove, we could assume that if left to their own thinking and not being self-aware, the eagle would dominate the conversation, dominate how long it is, how we talk, how we interact. And the dove, I don't know if, I guess it depends on their personality or their style or their, sort of where they're at in their life. They may relatively shut down and become the doormat of that conversation. And therefore, that's not a good start to a conversation or a situation. And so I think what I hear you saying is that, as you understand these one, your personality, but 2, as you understand other personalities, you have the ability to sort of step into that a little bit more. In other words, and I wouldn't say that I'm defying my own personality, but I'm trying to be more accommodating to the situation, to the relationship, if you will. Is that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, imagine a sales situation where you have this eagle salesperson. They're driving to the meeting. They've been looking forward to this meeting for months. They've been trying to get in. Finally, today is the big day. I finally get to meet the individual who I'm trying to make this deal with. And the whole way there, they're driving there and they're saying to themselves, when I leave, by the time I leave there, I'm closing this deal. It is a done deal today. And so they arrive, and who meets them at the door of the building? Person walks up and says, "Hi, welcome. It's so nice to meet you. Did you have a nice trip? Before we start talking business, why don't we go to the cafeteria? Let's get you some tea, water, coffee, anything. You know what? I'd love to introduce you to the team, give you a little tour of the facility. I really just want to learn about who you are. How did you get into this industry? And what's the eagle doing?" They're like, "Well, this is not helping me."
Let's get down to it.
Eagle, yeah, I want to close the deal. I can't talk about my background and I had a nice ride. I mean, I need to close this deal today. And so the problem is then that eagle, who's lacking of self-awareness, keeps jumping into business, starts talking about their product, starts telling what they can do for their company. And the problem is, what's going to close that deal? Creating connection, Because for the dove, you aren't making that sale unless you create that connection with them. And so for the eagle who lacks style flexibility and only stays in eagle mode, they're not going to create that rapport and connection that they need.
Wow. That's fascinating. I can even see it the other way around, where you come in, whatever your style is, and let's say the person at the door is like a massive eagle, and you're suddenly on your heels because you thought that you had this all figured out, and suddenly you've got your match right in front of you, ready to take you down and hard negotiate with you, and maybe you weren't ready. It's fascinating. Here's the other thing I'm thinking about, Merrick, and that is somebody doing a job interview.
Yeah.
Let's say you're sitting with a panel of 3 to 5 people, and you come in with XY personality, or to your point, maybe you come in with this really dominant, confident personality. Same thing applies, right? This whole thing could shake off wrong if you don't get the personalities that are sitting across the table.
In a job interview, it's a sales setting. You're just selling yourself. And here's what I always tell people when they're going on interviews. It's not the questions that trip you up, because you've practiced all those questions. It's the interviewer that trips you up. And so what I would tell them is, here's what I want you to do. Take those standard set of interview questions, and I want you to answer them 4 times. Once for an eagle, once for a parrot, once for a dove, and once for an owl. Because now, no matter who you interact with, you're going to be able to connect with that person. And I'll give you kind of a sales example so you can see this play out. I was doing an interview with somebody from Sirius XM, so satellite TV, satellite radio. They have a real estate show. And she had asked me this question. She said, all right, what happens if you walk a customer, a couple into a home, and you've got 1 eagle, 1 dove. Now what do you do? And so here's what I said. I mean, I've never sold a home. I bought a home, but I don't know how to sell a house, but I do know the styles. So I said, here, how about this? I walk them in and I say, bottom line, here's how much the house is. Here's how many square footage you get. Here's how much property. Here's your taxes, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms. Let me tell you about the community. What a wonderful place to raise a family. Do you see that park in the beginning of the neighborhood? Kids there all the time. And so what are you doing? You've got to connect, whether you're one-on-one or with a group. You've got to connect with everyone. If I'm in an interview and there's multiple people there and I don't know their styles, you can bet I'm going to be some little eagle, little parrot, little dove, little owl. I'm going to connect with everyone in that room, because when you are trying to influence others, you've got to trigger their natural hardwiring, display their style.
Wow. I am in no form an expert in this area of personalities, although I use DISC in my coaching, maybe DISC 363, where, just trying to get some feedback and this, that, and the other. But, and no disrespect to DISC, I think DISC is one of the best, but I love the way that you have put this in terms of because just as you're talking, I literally can visualize these animals, if you will, and it just makes so much sense.
Well, if you think about it, nobody, DISC is just out there. It's in the public domain. Nobody owns DISC. There's no like the DISC people. It's just DISC is out there. There are many DISC assessments, and the 4 birds parallel DISC.
Yeah.
So for your listeners who know the DISC model, the dominant D is the eagle. That interactive or influential I is the parrot. This more steadfast or supportive S is the dove, and the analytical, conscientious C is the owl. There's 4 brain quadrants. There are 4 styles. We all have the same 4 styles. You can go back thousands of years. There are many different models of style and of personality, and they all are the same thing. And so I just wanted to make it easy. I just want people to be able to look at it and just get it.
I can just say that, just speaking with you for a few minutes, you've already sort of locked it into my brain, a little bit better understanding of that. So you're probably familiar with Stephen Covey, the late Stephen Covey, and he said that we have 2, I don't remember if you said 2 personalities or not, but essentially that we have two beings, I guess you could say. We have a private and a public persona, maybe he was trying to say. Is it the same in the personality lane,
Yeah.
if you will?
Yeah, just like in the disc world, you get two graphs. If you were to take the assessment, you get this public self and private self.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're different in different settings. I'll give you a couple examples. I wrote a book called, one of my books is Personality Wins, Who Will Take the White House and How We Know. And I had a vision. It's not political. It's just, I had a theory. Could I predict who would win a presidential election just based on the birds? Started working it back in time. 22 elections in a row, I would have been right, going all the way back to 1932. Wow. Certain styles win and they beat other styles. We could do a whole conversation about that, but I will tell you this.
Wow.
That take somebody like JFK. In public, he was that electric parrot, charisma. Behind the scenes, people talked about him as an eagle. He was quick and he was decisive. Flip that around for George W. Bush. In public, he was the eagle. I'm the decider. Mission accomplished. But in private, people talk about him being the parrot in private. So they actually kind of switched. And there's one public self and one private self. And that's true for a lot of us. Sometimes at work, the role or the culture requires us to act a certain way. But then we go home and we're a little bit different. So to your point, yes, sometimes there is a difference between that public persona and that private self.
And we probably, and it's very likely that we like one more than the other. You see?
One is probably more comfortable. And it is probably the private self, because the public self is what we adapt to be successful in the role or in the culture that we're in. And whereas the private self, it's just me being me.
Yes. And so you have to work that public self, and therefore can be draining, I guess.
Yes.
Perhaps being more of what you're not really.
Right, because when you're in your style, it feeds you. When you're out of your style, it drains you. At the end of the day, they may just be like, oh, I just got to go home and let me be for a little while. Working out of that natural mode.
Yeah, that's very, very fascinating. You know, in your books, you write about this idea called home rule, which I love it. I've heard it in different iterations, but would you tell the audience a little bit about the home rule?
Well, we talk about the golden rule, which is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We'll bring it into more modern English. Treat people how you want to be treated. And if you think about what we've been talking about this entire time, wait, treat people how you want to be treated? No, treat people how they want to be treated. And I'll even tweak it just a little more. Treat people how they need to be treated.
Yeah,
there is a hardwiring. See, the golden rule is about respect. People want to be treated with respect.
That's right.
But if you're an owl and I'm delegating a project to you, you don't just want a lot of information. You need information so you can feel comfortable to be able to do it. If you are a dove, you don't just want people to get along. You need people to get along, because if they don't, you're going to be stressed from the drama and the conflict. So this idea of the home rule is, look, do you want people to be comfortable? Treat them how they need to be treated. And guess what? Not only do they get their needs met, but you get your needs met too.
That seems very, very important. And I'll make the assumption back in the day when we read about the golden rule, or when the golden rule was sort of, became a thing, that the assumption was, and I don't lose the spirit of what is meant by the golden rule, to me, it's probably an assumption that you're talking about good, treat others the way that you want to be treated, i.e. meaning to treat you well, with respect. And so I get that. But I think
it's the virtues of what you're saying. Like, in other words, the golden rule applied to kindness and respect and integrity and fairness and compassion. And absolutely treat others how you want to be treated. I'm not invalidating that.
No, I'm getting
that the opposite of it is also true. Not only do we treat others how we want to be treated from a values perspective, but treat others how they need to be treated from a style perspective. It's actually what underlies that is honoring people. It's the same underlying theme.
And I think that's a very important distinction, because and even as I approach folks, and I used to say, and what I love about this is I used to say, well, what if, if people use the golden rule out of context, I guess you could say, my question is, well, what if I don't mind being treated like crap? So I'm clear to move that way towards others, you see. And I think that's the implication. But The other thing, though, in what you're saying, Merrick, is that if I approach someone with more of, what do they need? I guess you could say, with that sort of question or thought in my mind, more empathy, more compassion, more thinking about them, and how what they need. I mean, I think that's a powerful way to think about how you interact with others.
Imagine as a parent, you think, what does my child need in this moment? Or as a manager who has a group of people, and they have some eagles, some parrots, some doves, some owls. They have people of different styles. They inevitably have different needs. And if you were to say, what does this person need versus what does this person need? Just even take something like feedback. If I were giving feedback to an owl, I might provide specifics and details and data. If I were providing feedback to a parrot, I would just walk in and say, that was awesome. Loved it. Great energy. If I gave feedback to a dove, I might just say, thank you. You really made a difference. Not only did you make a difference for the team, you made a difference for our customers. If I was talking to an eagle, I might say, you helped us achieve our objective. Because of that, we increased that, decreased that, nicely done. And here's the thing, how different were each of those forms of feedback? The eagle was about results, the dove's about just genuine appreciation, the parrot is about energy, the owl is about detail. If you ask yourself, what does this person need? They may need something very different from someone else on your team. They also may need something very different than you would have needed in that situation. So it's just a powerful question to center us on focusing on their needs so they can really feel fulfilled in their role. I mean, we talk about the great resignation. So many people are quitting. I bet if you had a manager that kept asking themselves, what does this person need from me in this moment? Oof. Wouldn't see such a high turnover rate.
Wow, that's yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. Merrick, how would you advise people, and how would you advise people that, let's say they work with let's say they're something other than dominant, or they could be, I guess you'd say, an eagle, but they work for a really tough eagle, really high-end eagle. How do you deal with a person like that? I mean, how is there a way to confront someone like that? I know confront's a strong word, but because you mentioned feedback, and I think that's a very, very important component. I think some are afraid to give feedback to their bosses.
Sure.
You might even be intimidated to give feedback to an eagle. Frankly, if you're a dove or something else, you don't want to start any stuff. I guess I just want to ask you a little bit about dealing with other people, whereas they are, an eagle is the obvious one to choose here. How would you give feedback to an eagle?
You always have to speak their language. And I'll give you an example. I'll show you the example from a direct report perspective, and then I'll flip it around to manager. If I was walking up to an eagle, and I'm a dove, and I said, oh, I've got this eagle, and the dial is turned up a lot. They're pushing the eagle into the red zone. Their directness has become abrasive. Their assertiveness has become aggressive. I've got to say something. So I walk into the eagle and I say, you just need to pay attention to people's feelings and tune into how their emotional state. How am I doing? I mean, obviously, horrible, because I'm speaking the language of the dove. I'm not using eagle language. And what I'm doing is saying, look, if you were more like me, you would be okay.
I see.
So if I were to say to that eagle, look, I know results are important to you. They're important to me too. When you talk to me in this way, it upsets me, and I'm not going to get the results that you want. But you can be direct, you can be assertive, but I need you to be respectful. And you know what? You're going to achieve your goals because of it. Wow. Is an eagle likely to hear that? At least way more likely, because I'm using eagle language. I'm not saying to the eagle, don't be an eagle. What I'm saying is you need to be the healthy version of that eagle, because right now you're not going to get the best out of me. But be direct, be assertive, call it like it is. I appreciate that, but don't dial it up too much.
Before you go on though, there's that sort of expresses the notion about how you deal with the bullying. That is, you stand up to them. And again, obviously I'm not talking about violence here, but you're using some of their own style to let them know too. I mean, right?
You're speaking their language.
You're speaking their language.
Speak your language. I always say, look, you're talking to an eagle. If you have an eagle manager, here's my tip for dealing with your eagle manager. Be brief, be brilliant, be gone. Tell them what you need to tell them, and then you're out. Don't walk in. If you're the parrot, don't hang out in their doorway and tell them about your weekend and what this great movie I just saw. You walk in, tell them what they need, and that's it. And if you're a dove, don't write a long preamble to your emails. Hi, how are you? I hope everything's well. I hope you had a really nice weekend. If you're talking to an eagle, you can literally just say, here's the information you requested. They're not going to be offended. In fact, they're going to appreciate it. So whether you're talking to your manager, a direct report, or a customer, or anyone, reflect their style back to them. It triggers their hardwiring. They will appreciate it.
Wow. You know, and I'll tell you, I think about this as you're speaking. And for instance, if I'm drafting an email, and let's say I need to be rather pointed or maybe display some ego tendencies, or maybe I'm frustrated, so there's some emotion involved, I'll literally, turn it over to, my best and finest critic, my wife, and ask her to read it. And she will read it from more of a dove owl standpoint and really give me some good tips.
Yes, you have what I refer to as a dove filter. Every eagle needs one.
Yes.
It's somebody, it's either their spouse or they have a coworker where you say, can you just read this before I send it? And you're pretty convinced it's fine. And then they give it back to you and they're like, no, do not say it like that. You're like, say it like what? They know how to say it.
That's
Every
right.
eagle leader needs a good dove filter to be able to hand it to make sure they're saying it in a way that's not going to offend anyone.
Man, I love that, and because the same works for the parrot. I'm more of a parrot, especially when I'm speaking, obviously. I spent 20 years in the Air Force, so it was drilled in me about, communicate, being succinct with your writing. It's going to the colonel. You don't need to, send them a 10-page report when you could put it in a small paragraph. So I tend to be more succinct and brief when I write, but not so much when I speak. But from that standpoint, still, if you tend to be that way, you could look for somebody else that might offer you maybe an eagle that says, you're too long-winded there. Get to the point.
Exactly. The beauty of the stylist is that you have experts all around you. If you have to communicate with an owl and you're not sure how to word it, just find someone else who's an owl and ask them, how is this? Because they know that you literally have experts of all four styles. If a salesperson doesn't know how to present this to someone and they're very different, like, I do not know how to sell this to a dove, find a dove, run it by them. They'll tell you exactly how to present it. It's the beauty of the styles. People are experts and they're all around you.
And yes, you got a great point there. And so let me ask, Merrick, what would you recommend that folks do? And I want to recommend your books too, but which book would you recommend first to the folks listening if they wanted to learn more about personalities? And the other thing that I would ask from a practical standpoint, see if the right question, how would you encourage them to learn this and then put this into practice, whether it be in the workplace or whatever the case might be?
I would suggest the Chameleon. It's simple, it's fun, it's a little bite-sized wisdom. The first fable teaches you the four birds. After that, there are 21 lessons of how to apply it in your life. And I have a feeling you will see yourself in the fables. You'll see yourself in the stories. And how do you apply this in your life? I think it really is a matter of making sure you don't impose your style on others, that you are really thinking, what do they need? And then reflect the style back to them. Just be yourself, honor your own style, but don't impose it on other people and try to change them.
Very good. And so I'll reflect back on what you said earlier, that one, become self-aware, know your style and the implications of your style, correct? So
Yes.
Maybe as you're reading Chameleon, you're looking there, you're trying to identify this. And I would submit to you that people listening to this, having heard the four styles that you just described, and I'm asking you to actually describe them one more time, all four of them, that they will recognize themselves in there pretty much. So you become aware of your style and the implications, or I should say the impact that it has on others. And then you learn the other styles as well and learn how to move into that style, albeit may take a little more energy to do it. But you learn, that's how you learn to connect and communicate, correct?
Absolutely. I always say, look, I'll use the sales example. If you're selling someone and their style is different from yours,
Hmm.
one of you is going to leave that interaction exhausted, and it better be you. And this is true no matter what you're doing. If you're managing someone, their style is different from yours. You
Yeah.
have to be able to flex. And look, the 4 styles, they're just so straightforward. You've got the eagle, they're confident, they're assertive, they're take charge and direct. Parrots, fun, interactive, talkative, social. They are optimistic. Doves, caring, compassionate, harmonious, helpful. They just want everyone to get along. Owls, logical, analytical, questioning. If they're doing something, they have a process and a plan. They're going to do it right. They're going to do it right the first time. And once again, you're not just one, you're a combination of all 4, but there's probably 1 or 2 which are really core for you.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Wow. I could go on really forever talking about this, and you're right. We may have to have another conversation. I will ask you, I'm not trying to turn, in fact, I'm not going to go political here, but I think it's fascinating to ask about, Putin versus Zelensky. And again, not about the war itself, but about the personalities.
Right.
Fair to say that Putin's an eagle? From what we can tell.
There's no doubt. Look, everyone has these 4 styles, but sometimes behaviors don't flow from style. Look, you take Putin, clearly he's the eagle. But here's what happens. You take confidence and you dial it up, and you get arrogance. You dial up arrogance, you can even move into this narcissistic place. You dial it up even more and you move into narcissistic personality disorder. Putin is probably not just on the healthy end of the eagle style. He's probably heading towards the other end. I mean, certainly narcissistic, whether it's a disorder, we'll leave psychologists to answer that. Probably is.
Good point.
But that's part of the challenge, is that we take any of these styles and you keep cranking that dial up and it becomes a disorder. And that's part of the challenge. Versus Zelensky, I mean, look at his parrot. I mean, he is just, he's got some, clearly has eagle, but he's got a healthy version of confident eagle, but he also, I mean, people are just looking at him and saying, man, this guy, look at his background. I mean, he goes from being an actor and to leading a country, and now look what he's inherited. And people are rallying behind him. He's got charisma. I think you're seeing a lot of parrot eagle there.
But that's interesting, just really fascinating what you're saying there, because on the other hand, I mean, I don't know Zelensky from anybody else, just from what I'm seeing on there. And perhaps though we're seeing, because of who he's interacting with, we're seeing a lot more ego than maybe he actually is. I mean, would that be fair to say?
I mean, during
out of necessity,
time, he's got to dial it up. I mean, there's just not a question. I mean,
he's got to, on the one hand, call for, speak, from a parrot standpoint, where you're being more connecting, if you will, more whatever. But then on the other hand, if you're dealing with a person like that, we're back to, hey, I also got to let you know this,
Right. But it's so fascinating. You could use the president as a lens, which is why I wrote Personality Wins. Look, based on your experience, you look at someone like Eisenhower. I mean, here's like the supreme commander on D-Day, and he's this owl dove. And his troops loved him. I mean, they absolutely, because he was like, he stood for the common man. He made sure everybody ate well, right? That was like, that was one of the things he was like, hey, we have to take care of our armed forces. And people just loved him. I mean, he had so much dove and so much owl. He had so many systems. And look, on D-Day, he writes a note and basically says, look, if this fails, it is on me. It is not on them. I mean, that is total accountability, which is a very owl thing. It's also very dove. I'm not blaming others.
Got it.
If it doesn't work, it's on me. So sometimes we might think, well, during war, you'd need that eagle style. Actually, here's someone during war. I mean, and he was wrangling some pretty big egos at that time. If you look at all of the heads of the different countries that he was coordinating with it, and I think he was able to do it because he had that very objective owl and more personable dove. So it's just a fascinating thing. We can look at people through the lens of style, and it really helps us understand why they were successful and why they
Wow. Merrick, I'm also thinking about this more now as you're talking about this from a leadership standpoint, and having, I work with a lot of leaders. It's one of the, my biggest clientele is working in leadership, soft skills and this, that. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that there is this assumption that to be a strong leader or to be a strong person, I need to basically puff my chest out and say, here's what we're about to do. And I mean, I think most of us know better, but you're really making this argument. No, that's not necessarily true.
Yeah,
Maybe there are times, when it's time, when we're in war, we're probably not going to be nicing it up. I'm just going to say, go take the hill. I'm going to play eagle there.
Yeah. I mean, look at some great leaders, some business leaders from recent history. Okay. You've got Jeff Bezos, you've got Steve Jobs. Okay. They had some eagle, definite eagle energy there. But Richard Branson, I mean, he's all parrot. And these are self-made billionaires. Yes. Howard Schultz from Starbucks. I mean, his book, Pour Your Love in It. I mean, you don't get a more dove book title than that. Bill Gates, he wrote a book, Business at the Speed of Thought. In other words, you succeed by thinking. That's what drives success. Whereas I love you. I'll give you the other two. Somebody like Jack Welch, Eagle. His book title, Winning. I mean, very interesting. Richard Branson, and you can't beat this as a parrot book title. Screw it, let's do it. I mean, an owl would never have that as a book title. And what I love is the word let's, because it's not just screw it, just do it. It's like, let's all do it. Yeah. We're all going to do it together. Yeah. And let's see what happens. And you can see that, look, these are 4 self-made billionaires.
Yes.
Of all different styles. And I always tell leaders when I'm working with CEOs and leaders, I say, look, your style absolutely does not determine your level of success. However, it absolutely determines how you go about being successful. An eagle leader goes about being successful very differently than a dove, but it doesn't mean that one's going to be more successful than the other.
Wow. That's, and there is such an assumption about this whole eaglehood thing. I'll tell you very quickly, a quick story that I spent 3 years my wife and I both, she was working there as well at the U.S. Embassy in Israel and Tel Aviv. And, in the military, I mean, I spent 20 years and she spent 10 years in, and you bosses change every 2 or 3 years. It's the way that it is in the military. I recall when I first got there, our first boss, he was a defense attaché. He was Air Force colonel. He was a cocky, kind of arrogant pilot type. If you ever saw this, he might not necessarily agree with this.
Well, the eagle, we dialed it up, and he dialed it up a little bit.
He was very much eagle. He's actually a very quiet person. So I would say he was absolutely eagle, but he had
owl in there too.
Certainly some owl in there stuff. So he was relatively quiet, and but 100% away from, however far you can get away from parrot, that's how far away he was. But here was the interesting thing. He was one of the best bosses I ever had for this reason. He understood that about himself. And he as odd as this may sound, so we had about 20 people on the floor, military and civilian, of all 4 services, actually 3 services were in there. And he had this thing every month at his place, and it was mandatory fun. You had to show up in shorts, t-shirt, flip-flops. You were ordered not to speak about work, and you came, and he had this beautiful layout where his wife had prepared all the food and wine, and it was just a treat out in the back door in a beautiful temperature, of course, most of the year in Israel. And his wife was absolutely a beautiful parrot, and he knew that about her. And I have to admit, there's some assumptions going on here, but I knew 100% that he was doing this intentionally. And the morale in our office was always up here because he was demanding. He was an eagle. He wasn't hard to get along with or any of that sort. He wasn't sort of like this dominating style, but he also understood that we all needed to come together, be a team, connect. And so he brought us into their home where his wife was just the most amazing hostess. And I think 100% he used her in a good way as part of his leadership.
Yeah. And look, it comes full circle from our conversation today. First of all, you staff your weakness. I love that. Tapping into her skill set as the parrot.
Yes.
But coming full circle, it's where I began. The most successful people are the most self-aware people. He was a self-aware eagle.
Yes, he was.
And that shows you when you are self-aware, your style helps you and it doesn't hinder you. And we all can display any style. So not only was he a self-aware eagle, but he was also the chameleon who had style flexibility and knew that it can't just be all business. The eagle and the owl are on the task side, the results side. Eagle do it now, owl do it right. The parrot and dove are on the people side, and he recognized we have to pay attention to culture also. So that's powerful. That's a great example.
You know, there's a funny story that goes with that. We entertained, of course, a lot of, I should say, you know, hosted a lot of American military and civilian diplomats and this, that, and the other, you know. And we had a chief of staff whose personality was about like, I don't know, like that doorknob over there that I'm looking at. It was just as worse as, it was a 4-star general, chief staff of the Air Force. And I remember, and his personality was just so dry and so, it was painful to be around him, quite honestly. And I remember the defense attaché came back to the office one day after spending the day with them. And he said to me, he said, boy, that general, my gosh, what a terrible personality. I mean, you can't even just, couldn't even talk to him. And I was sitting there thinking, you know, here you got these two people sitting in the back. It must have been painful for everybody, you know. So anyways, it was just hilarious that, yes, he was self-aware, but not self-aware enough in that sense, because he thought the other guy was a real bore.
Right. They're if you were to graph their styles, they may have been actually similar.
No, exactly. And that's exactly right. So it was just chuckled when he said that, anyway. So, well, listen, Merrick, how can people get in touch with you? Certainly would love to send them to, and of course we'll put all of this in the show notes, but I want to hear from you where's the best place to find you, you know, your books, all of that.
You can go to takeflightlearning.com and you can learn about the different training programs that we have when we go into companies, and everything from understanding the styles to using them to sell and lead and innovate and manage conflict. We have a lot of certification program as well.
Very nice.
Close to 1,000 certified trainers around the world, where we certify coaches, we certify trainers, in-house consultants, and we teach them how to use the styles in their own practice and in their own world. So you can pick up the books on Amazon, Audible. There you can listen to them if you like. And I'll tell you a little
please,
people don't know. If you pick up the Audible version of the Chameleon. So I play guitar, as you can see behind me, and I occasionally will play a little song about the eagles, parrots, doves, and owls on stage, because I'm a parrot and that's what parrots do. And I thought, I wonder if I record the song and put it at the end of my audiobook. Will Audible notice that? Evidently not. So if you pick up a copy of the Chameleon on Audible, at the very end, a song just kind of randomly comes on it.
I love that. That's a great idea. Well, listen, Merrick Rosenberg, you know, speaking of personality, you have such a great, I would even use this word, a lovely personality. It's just really so easy to be around you and listen to you. There's no doubt in my mind, you're a terrific teacher and consultant and coach. And I'm so grateful that you spent some time with us here on Grow Yourself, and look forward to staying in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Listen, the pleasure's mine. Thanks so much.